evening and welcome back. This evening I wanted to talk a little bit more about the idea of acceptance and the idea of sort of leaning into uncomfortable feelings. The other day, a friend of mine shared with me an article he had found where he talked about, the title of the article was like, Advice from Buddhist Monks on How to Live in the Quarantine or whatever. And in some ways, not being able to leave our house, not being able to interact socially like we might typically do. A lot of this type of thing is similar to a more monastic lifestyle. And I'm certainly not a monk, and I'm not going to recommend most people go out and become monks. But the first point in this article, and the first thing was to lean into uncomfortable feelings or to not push them away, but sort of experience them and let them be whatever they are. In one of these earlier meditations, I talked about a technique that's taught by the Kripalu lineage of yoga that is called Burfwa, or breathe, relax, feel, watch, and allow. And it's similar in a lot of ways to another practice, which is an easier to remember acronym called RAIN. And RAIN is also like Burfwa, or riding the wave as it's also sometimes called. The idea is to accept and experience reality as it is instead of trying to cling to it or push it away. They're very similar. Tonight we're going to talk about rain. Actually, the weather forecast here in Michigan calls for snow, but we're looking at rain. So the 4 steps of rain, the R, there are a couple different, depending on who is teaching this, the R could stand for one of 2 things. The first thing that R can be is relax, which is the same as the R in Burfwa. But more traditionally, the R also stands for recognize. So understand, again, what is happening. There was that other study I believe I might have mentioned where they looked at the number of feelings that we can experience, and then they looked at how many feelings most people can identify. And when I've done this in my classes, I'll give people a minute or so to write down as many feelings as they could come up with. There's something like, I don't know, a pretty large number of feelings that we could have, but most people can't list more than 7 or so. So what I'm getting to is that we're kind of limited in our emotional vocabulary or what we think we're feeling. So when we practice meditation and when we practice rain, we want to try to be aware of whatever the feeling is. We might, because I'm sure we've all had feelings where we didn't know until later what it was we were actually feeling. So with recognize, the R in rain, we want to as it says, recognize what is happening right now. What am I feeling? Can I name this feeling? What is going on, essentially? The A in RAIN stands for either accept or allow. And here I think it's important when we look at accept that it doesn't mean the same as approve, or it doesn't mean the same as like. A lot of us accept or allow does not mean the same thing as like. I could, have something happening right now that is terribly unpleasant, and I may not like it at all, but if I tell myself it's not happening, it doesn't change the fact that it is happening. So what I want to do is accept it. Okay, this is happening. I don't like it, but it's happening. And the only way to work with it is to accept that it is happening. The I in RAIN is for investigate. Again, become your little meditating private eye. Watch what's happening. Investigate. If it's a physical sensation, what does it feel like? Is it warm, cool? Does it have a texture? Is it isolated in one part of your body? Does it move to different parts of your body? What happens as you watch it? Does it change? Does it stay the same? Does it stay the same? What happens? So, again, in Buddhism, we're taught that everything arises, peaks, and passes away. So everything is constantly changing. So you may not like something right now, write it out. It's going to change. So with acceptance and investigate, we accept what's happening and we watch, investigate what happens when it changes. And again, like birth was sometimes called riding the wave. I like to call it surfing meditation. And then we get to the N in RAIN, which stands for non-identify. Simpler way to say it is we are not our thoughts, we are not our feelings, we are not these things that we are experiencing. It's a whole other philosophical discussion to try to figure out what we are, but we know that we are not our thoughts. For example, they had that big rally in Lansing yesterday, and I got completely pissed off and angry about it, and all of that. But it's important to remember that I am not anger. I am not those emotions. I'm more than that, or whatever. But I was experiencing those things, but so many of us from time to time get caught up in a whole bunch of different things. So we want to remember that we may be experiencing something, and if something is really intense, and it's easy to get caught up into it, and it's easy to say, oh, yeah, I identify with this. No, we want to non-identify. We want to remember that this is happening, but we're riding the wave, or we are experiencing this experience. We are not it. So again, as we practice and as we're sitting and different thoughts and different sensations, work through the 4 stages of RAIN. Recognize what's happening. Excuse me. Accept what is happening. Again, that doesn't mean you have to like it. Investigate it. Watch it. and non-identify. So as we begin to sit, again, take your comfortable seated position, sitting up with a nice long neutral spine. Have your shoulders relaxed. Have your chin slightly tucked. If it's comfortable, you may close your eyes. If you keep your eyes open, try not to focus on any one thing in particular. First, let your mind settle on whatever the object of meditation is. In these videos, I've mostly been talking about breath meditation, being aware of the breath as the object of meditation. Maybe next week I'll talk about mantra as an object of meditation. But for now, settle your mind onto whatever that object of meditation is. If it's the breath, as you breathe in, know that you are breathing in. And as you breathe out, know that you are breathing out. Again, when a thought or a feeling or a sensation arises, first allow it to come up. Note it briefly and without judgment, and with an exhalation, simply let it go, returning the full awareness to the breath. You might practice this and start to realize that the same thought or the same feeling or the same sensation keeps coming back and keeps coming back and keeps coming back. That's our chance to start to practice rain with that particular sensation or that particular thought. So with the recognize part, if it's a thought, what is that thought? Dive into it without judgment. Can you put a name to the thought, or a name to the feeling, or a name to the sensation? Again, ask yourself, what is happening right now? And then with the A, accept, again, accept that it is happening. As much as we might want to change something, we cannot right now. Whatever is happening to us is happening. It does not make any sense to try to push it away or do anything with it. Accept. Investigate. What does it feel like? Where are you noticing these sensations? What happens when you watch it? as you investigate, try to investigate without expectation. Again, when it changes, accept that it changes and however it changes. Allow it to unfold however it does. And N, non-identify. Again, whatever the feeling is, we are not that feeling. Whatever the thought is, we are not that thought. Two other quick things about rain. First one, there's a psychologist and meditation teacher named Tara Brach who did a lot of excellent work about rain. So if you wanted to find out more about that practice, I would suggest you look into her books. She has a couple of them now. True Refuge is the one that I'm remembering the name of at the top of my head, but she has a couple of other ones, so check out her work. And the other thing about rain, and I think it's a really effective and applicable practice, because you don't have to be sitting in formal meditation to benefit from that. You could, be sitting at, you could be in a meeting or just something else happening in life, and you might have a sensation that might throw you for a loop or whatever. You could, when you're trained in the rain practice, you could say, oh, I got it. Or, oh, this is an opportunity to practice rain. I'm not really liking that, but if I take time to experience it, recognize it, accept, investigate, then you're better able to consciously respond to what is happening instead of just reacting. Yep, Sarah, it is called Radical Acceptance. That was the other book by Tara Brach that I could not remember the name of. It is Radical Acceptance. All right, before we wrap up, I'm not sure if I'm going to be here Saturday evening to do this or not. I am definitely planning to do my weekly Sunday evening metta meditation. I will let you know Saturday if I'm planning to do a Saturday night meditation. I kind of like to do one night on, one night off, but we'll see what happens. But check out my Facebook page. I will put the announcement Saturday afternoon if I'm doing it Saturday night, and I'll definitely be here Sunday. So bring your hands into prayer position and take a moment or two here to quietly thank yourself for practicing this evening. I think it's always a good idea to acknowledge the things we do, because so many of us are always thinking about the next thing, or we also are trained to think about the not so great things. So I think it's a wonderful thing to acknowledge the good things that we do for ourselves, in this case practice. So take a moment to quietly thank yourself for practicing this evening. Thank you for being here. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay home. And I will see you either Saturday or Sunday evening. Shanti.